This happened a few years ago. I was traveling for work, like I usually did. I needed peace after my breakup. The train station was crowded, with the sound of voices and old signs creaking. I thought I was used to it, but I've never stopped thinking about what happened. I boarded a late-night train to a small town. The compartment was dim, and the hum of the engine felt heavy. I noticed an old man sitting across from me. He stared, mumbling to himself. I tried to ignore him, but it felt strange. His eyes were dark and penetrating. I told myself it was just my imagination. Weeks went by, and I found myself on another train. A woman sat next to me. Her hair was wild, and she spoke in riddles. "The answer is always hidden away," she said, looking straight at me. I didn't understand. My heart raced, and I asked her to repeat herself. She just smiled and went quiet. Was I imagining her? It felt like the stress of traveling was getting to me. On another trip, a small child drew pictures on my lap. The drawings were creepy, dark figures with twisted shapes. I wanted to tell the kid to stop, but I was too stunned. I looked at his face. He was serious. "They're watching you," he said. I felt a chill run down my spine. I pulled away, my skin prickling. Maybe I was finally losing it. Then the old man appeared again on yet another train. He kept staring at me like he knew something important. I wanted to look away, but I felt trapped, like he was digging into my thoughts. My heart raced each time we met. Maybe I was just imagining things. They felt too real, though. I started avoiding eye contact with others, afraid of what I might see. There was one last encounter that haunts me. I was on my way home late one night, exhausted. I stared out the window, trying to block the shadows in my mind. When I turned around, the old man was back. He leaned in close and whispered, "You shouldn't have come back." I froze, panic rising in my chest. I turned to leave, but there was nowhere to go. The train felt too crowded, and yet I felt so alone. I glanced back, but he had disappeared. My breathing quickened, and disbelief washed over me. What just happened? Years later, I still don't know what to make of those encounters. Were they real, or just figments of my lonely mind? I wonder if those train rides took me somewhere else, somewhere darker. Maybe it was all in my head, but I can't shake this feeling of dread. Did I cross paths with something meant to stay hidden? Just an ordinary train ride, or something sinister entirely? The weeks turned into months, and I tried to forget about those unsettling train rides. I kept my routine, but every trip felt like stepping back into the unknown. Each time the clatter of wheels on tracks started, memories flooded back. The old man's gaze, the woman's riddles, the child's drawings. I convinced myself they were just figments of a weary mind seeking a break. But deep down, I knew otherwise. I had to ride again. This time, I took a different route. I needed to escape the nagging feeling that those past encounters held meaning. The new train echoed with chatter, but I was silent, scanning the faces around me for the familiar. I hoped the strange wouldn't seek me out again, but it was no use. I settled into my seat, determined to focus on the scenery zipping by. Then I noticed her, a woman with long, dark hair sitting a few rows ahead. She turned to me and smiled, and I felt a shiver. I knew that smile. It felt hauntingly familiar. It was the same contagious smile the woman with the wild hair wore. I squeezed my eyes shut. When I opened them, the woman was gone. I took a deep breath, dismissing my imagination. Maybe I needed to talk to someone, but my voice caught in my throat. Instead, I took out my phone to distract myself. As I scrolled through my emails, an alert caught my eye. A news article about a series of disappearances connected to train routes across the country. My heart raced as I read about how several passengers claimed to have seen the same mysterious faces on board. Faceless shapes that seemed to fade away shortly after. My hands trembled as I read each word. "They're watching you," the child's voice echoed in my mind. I looked up, scanning the train car again. Had they moved on to another row? I felt eyes on me, piercing through my calm facade. I shifted nervously in my seat. Then I saw him. The old man from before. He was at the far end of the train, his gaze locked onto mine. I felt that tightness in my chest as my instincts screamed to run. But I couldn't. It was like he had cast a spell on me. I forced my eyes away, hoping to drown out the fear with my thoughts. The woman appeared again. She now stood beside the old man. They exchanged a glance, then looked at me. The air around me felt heavy. Time seemed to stretch, each second an eternity as I tried to understand what was happening. I clenched my fists, willing myself to move, to leave. Suddenly, the lights flickered above, momentarily plunging the train into darkness before they returned. I jerked my head back to look. The old man was gone. I could almost convince myself that I imagined it all, except something was left behind. A faded ticket lay on the seat next to me, its edges worn and crumpled. I reached out for it, my heart pounding. The destination listed wasn't even on my route. That's when I saw it, an unfamiliar name scrawled in ink. It sent a jolt through me. I stood up, scanning the car again. I needed to get off this train, but my feet felt glued to the floor. I had no idea what I was dealing with, but I was sure of one thing. I wasn't alone. Not anymore. I forced myself to breathe as my heart raced. The faded ticket lay in my trembling hand, its strange destination pulling at my curiosity and fear. I glanced around, hoping to see familiar faces, but they all seemed blurry, like a dream half-remembered. The chatter of passengers started to feel distant, almost muted. I focused on the ticket, willing it to give me answers without having to confront whatever lay ahead. "Get off the train," a voice whispered in my mind. I shook my head, fighting the urge to obey. Instead, I turned to the nearest window, watching the landscape blur into an endless ribbon of trees. The sudden idea of being trapped while it sped forward sent a chill up my spine. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, my eyes flitting between the ticket and the distant end of the car where the old man had sat. He had known something. I could feel it like an itch in the back of my mind. That name, the one I couldn't shake, throbbed in my thoughts. What or who was it connected to? I had to find out. With a burst of resolve, I started to walk down the aisle. I didn't intend to reach the end, but curiosity gripped me. The weight of the ticket in my pocket dragged me down, but I pressed on. I looked into each face I passed, searching for clarity, or maybe just an escape. Then I felt it. A cold breeze brushed past me, causing me to shiver. Nobody else reacted. I turned to look behind me. The passengers were engrossed in their own worlds, but with that wind came a sense of urgency. I paused, feeling the thrum of my pulse. The sensation of being watched closed in around me, tightening like a vice. Suddenly the lights flickered again. This time they dimmed longer, plunging the car into darkness once more. Panic surged as I heard the soft intake of a breath. I spun around, scanning faces barely illuminated by the scant light filtering in. Anxiety clawed at my guts. Then I caught a glimpse of something out of the corner of my eye. A figure stood at the rear of the train. It was shrouded in shadows, but the outline reminded me of the old man, the very figure I had sought to escape. My breath caught as I squinted, trying to make out any details. I thought I could see the familiar wild hair of the woman too. "Why are you here?" I whispered, but no one could hear me. Not over the rumble of the train. The lights flickered back to life, and I flinched as the figure straightened up. With a sudden rush, clarity replaced that feeling of being misty and muddled. The old man and the woman began to advance, their expressions unreadable, but their intent as clear as the ticket in my pocket. I turned and bolted towards the exit. I needed to get to the door to escape this nightmare. Each step felt heavy, as if the train itself was resisting my flight. I reached the end of the car, my hands clawing at the door handle. It wouldn't budge. The last thing I saw was the woman taking a step closer, her mouth moving but making no sound. Then I felt a hand on my shoulder. I whipped around, half expecting more apparitions, but found only emptiness behind me. "Get off!" I chanted to myself as I slammed my body against the door, sweat soaking through my shirt. But instead of an exit, the floor trembled. Then everything went dark. I emerged from the dark into a world of chaos. The rattling noise of the train surged back, and the stench of sweat and musty fabric filled my senses. I was no longer standing at the door. Instead, I found myself in a cramped room, the walls flickering under the harsh yellow light. It was small, more like a storage area than anything else, and the only exit was a sliding door that seemed to lead back into the train. Panic gripped me again. I pressed my palms against the smooth metal surface of the door. Flashes of the old man and woman lingered in my mind. Were they with me now? I shook my head to dislodge the thought and backed away slowly. My heart pounded in my chest. Something about this place felt wrong, otherworldly. I turned, searching for an exit, but just beyond the flickering light I noticed something on the floor. A dark patch, almost like a shadow, but it writhed and twisted, shaped like a person lying in wait. I stepped closer, fear prickling the back of my neck. It was then that the figure revealed itself, a woman, her eyes wide and glassy, staring straight at me. "Help me," she rasped, her voice barely audible beneath the thundering sound of the train. I felt a pull, an urge to assist, but I hesitated. Who was she? What had happened to her? "Get away!" I shouted, instinctively raising my arms to shield myself. My skin felt taut, as if the air itself was pressing in. The woman's form flickered like a bad signal on an old monitor. Was she even real? Suddenly she stretched her hand out toward me, her fingertips just grazing the air between us. "Find it. Before..." Her words faded away, lost in the noise. I could only stand there, caught in her haunting gaze, torn between fear and a strange sense of duty. I had to get out. I had to get away from her. With a burst of adrenaline, I rushed toward the sliding door, throwing my weight against it. The metal screeched as it opened, revealing a darkened corridor that led further down the train. I ran, ignoring the lingering sensation of her eyes on my back. I ran until I could hear my own breath over the train's clatter. I stumbled into another car, and this one was different. The lights were steady, casting a warm glow on rows of empty seats. But as I took a step inside, I froze. In each seat, a shadowy figure sat, all facing forward, silent and unmoving. Every hair on my body stood on end. The strength of their presence pressed down on me like a weight. "Who are you?" I managed to whisper, my throat dry. They didn't respond. Their heads were down, shrouded in darkness. Then, one by one, they began to turn their faces toward me. I wanted to scream, but the sound caught in my throat. As they locked eyes with me, an overwhelming wave of knowledge flooded my mind, visions of fear, loss, and grief. That's when I saw it. Tucked beneath one of the seats was a small, glowing object pulsing gently. It was the ticket. The same ticket that had brought me here. I didn't know why it was important, but I felt it deep within me. If I could reach it, maybe I could finally uncover the truth. Summoning every ounce of courage, I dashed forward, but as I reached for the ticket, the figures began to rise. I didn't wait to see what happened next. My instincts kicked in, and I turned to run again. But the figures were quick. They glided toward me, their movements fluid and unnatural. I felt trapped, with no way to escape. As I darted back into the corridor, their whispers began to fill the air. "Stay with us," they echoed. The voices intertwined, creating a cacophony that made my skin crawl. I pressed my hands against my ears to block them out, but they only grew louder and more insistent. "Leave me alone," I gasped, scrambling down the narrow passage, my legs moving faster than I could think. The train jolted, throwing me against the wall. I barely caught myself before launching forward again, stumbling into the next car. This one was darker, almost suffocating. The air felt thick, and I squinted to make out shapes. As my eyes adjusted, I saw them. More shadows. They hung closer than before. Too close. I felt their breaths. They were cold as ice. I could hardly tell where I was. It all felt like a twisted dream I couldn't wake up from. In a corner, I noticed a flickering light. A sign, maybe. I made my way toward it, my heart racing with every step. It was a small lantern, swinging gently from a thin chain above an old, rusty table. The table held a deck of cards, each card face down. I stopped, my pulse echoing in my ears. What was this doing here? I reached out slowly, drawn to the cards. "What are you?" I whispered. The figures in the shadows grew anxious, shifting in place. Then I heard the sound of whispers again. They felt more urgent now. "Play. With us," they urged. I hesitated. Play? In this nightmare? But something inside me nagged that maybe I had to in order to move forward. I picked up the top card. It felt warm, almost alive. I turned it over and my breath caught in my throat. It was a king, but not any king. A figure that looked just like the old man I had seen earlier. "What does this mean?" I muttered, feeling dizzy. I flipped the next card. It was a queen resembling the old woman. My mind raced with questions. Were these cards a clue? Had their fates intertwined with mine? Just then, a sudden chill swept through the car, and the shadows shifted again. They were racing toward me, their forms becoming sharper, more defined. I dropped the cards and sprinted for the exit, knowing I had to make it out before they caught me. I burst through the sliding door, finding myself in yet another car. It was eerily empty, save for a strange glow coming from further down. I squinted into the distance, and my heart sank as I saw a figure standing at the end of the aisle, silhouetted against the light. "Come closer," it beckoned with a voice like a whispering wind. Fear coursed through my veins. Who was this? There was no choice but to move forward, but that tugging feeling in my gut warned me. What awaited me in this brutal game? And then everything went dark. The darkness swallowed me whole. For a moment I was weightless, suspended in a black void. My mind raced, trying to grasp anything real. Slowly, the shadows began to lift, but the environment had changed. I found myself in a new train car, dimly lit and filled with an intense stillness. The figure at the end was gone. I squinted, trying to make sense of my surroundings. The light flickered above me, casting strange shadows that danced on the walls. I took a tentative step forward when I heard a soft, almost melodic humming. It came from somewhere deep in the car. I moved cautiously, the sound growing clearer with each step. It was comforting yet unsettling, like a lullaby that belonged to a different time. As I got closer, I noticed an old woman sitting alone in a faded seat, her hands resting on her lap. She wore a long, flowing dress that looked like it had come straight from another era. "Welcome, traveler," she said, her voice like the creaking of ancient wood. "You're safe here." My heart raced. "What do you want from me?" I asked, desperate for answers. She smiled, revealing a set of worn, yellowed teeth. "I want to play." Play. My thoughts darted back to the cards I had dropped in the previous car. "I don't have time for games," I snapped, trying to sound braver than I felt. But this game is essential. You must understand your journey." The humming stopped, and she leaned forward. "There are truths here that you seek." I looked around. The car felt suffocating again. "What truths?" She gestured to a small table beside her. On it lay a single card, face down. "This may help you. Turn it over." Curiosity gnawed at me. I hesitated before reaching for the card. But then a sudden chill enveloped me again, sharper than before. I could hear whispers in the air. "Don't trust her," they warned. I paused. Who was this woman? Did I really want to know what lay beneath that card? "Time is slipping away," she urged, her eyes gleaming with an unfathomable depth. "You must choose." I felt trapped, standing between fear and curiosity. I leaned over to flip the card, but just as my finger grazed the edge, the train jolted violently. The lights flickered, and in an instant the woman vanished. The card lay before me, pulsing with an eerie glow. I snatched it up, feeling the warmth radiate through my fingers. Before I could grasp what had just happened, the shadows returned, more insistent than before. "Stay with us," they wailed, nearly drowning me in their cries. Panic surged through me. I couldn't let them take me, not now. I had to escape. As I darted toward the exit, I glanced back at the table. The card shimmered, and I caught a glimpse of what it showed. A black figure, standing tall with a crown upon its head. I gasped, my heart racing as I rushed to the next car. "What do you want?" I yelled into the darkness, hoping for an answer. But nothing came, only silence. That same unsettling silence wrapped around me as I edged into a new car. Then I froze. Someone was in here with me. The shadows coiled around me, thick and suffocating. I turned slowly, adrenaline pounding through my veins. It was a man, standing against the far wall. He wore a tattered trench coat, its fabric stained and faded. His face was obscured by the low light, but I could feel his eyes boring into me. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice shaking despite my best effort to sound defiant. "Just a fellow traveler," he replied, his tone flat. "Like you." I refused to approach him. "What do you want?" He chuckled softly, a sound filled with both mirth and malice. "I want what everyone else wants, a way out." Before I could respond, the train lurched again, throwing me off balance. I stumbled backward, the walls of the car seeming to close in around me. The man didn't move. He just observed with a strange calmness. "Where is everyone?" I asked, desperate to understand what was happening. The entire train felt like it was trapped in a bubble, isolated from the world outside. "Long gone," he said, glancing at the empty seats and flickering lights. "But we're not alone, are we? Those shadows, they're hungry." My heart raced again. I thought of the woman, the card, the whispers. "I need to leave," I whispered, a sense of impending doom creeping over me. "Leave?" He stepped closer, and I could see the shimmer of something metallic in his hand. "And go where?" The sleek blade reflected the dim light, and fear gripped me. "Put that away. I don't want any trouble." "Trouble?" he sneered. "Trouble found you the moment you stepped into this car." I glanced toward the door, weighing my options. His presence filled the space with a suffocating tension, but I couldn't let fear trap me. I needed to find a way out and figure out what the card meant. Then I saw it, the shimmering light cast onto the floor from the card in my pocket. It pulsed gently, almost like a heartbeat. I instinctively reached for it, clinging to the warmth it provided. The man noticed. "What do you have there?" he asked, his eyes narrowing. "Nothing you need to worry about," I shot back, trying to sound firm. He stepped even closer, and a shiver ran down my spine. "That card belongs to me. It's not meant for you." I took a step back, bumping into the door. "Stay away from me." He laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the emptiness. "You think you can escape this place? There are worse things lurking in the shadows than me." I could hear the whispers again, growing louder, almost urging me to act, to make a choice. My breath caught in my throat. There had to be a way out, but was it through him or through what the card revealed? "Help me," I blurted out. "If you know a way out, please just tell me." The man paused. The amusement faded from his expression, replaced by something darker. "What are you willing to offer in return?" Before I could answer, the lights flickered wildly again. The air grew thicker and panic surged through me. Suddenly, the train screeched to a halt, throwing us both off balance. "That's not good," he mumbled, his eyes darting to the darkened doorway. That's when I saw it, a figure emerging from the shadows behind him, tall and ominous, crowned like the one I'd glimpsed on the card. I couldn't breathe. "Run," I breathed, panic lifting me as I rushed toward the exit, leaving the man and his hungry gaze behind. I burst through the door just as the figure stepped fully into the light. My heart pounded in my chest as I stumbled out onto the darkened platform. The air felt colder, and silence closed in around me, almost mocking my frantic escape. Glancing back, I saw the man standing in the doorway, backlit by the flickering lights of the car. He didn't follow. Instead, he stared at me, an unsettling smile creeping across his features. I could still feel a weight pressing on my chest, a reminder of the knife he had held and the shadows he had warned me about. I turned away and took my first shaky steps on the platform. The night was unnaturally quiet, the only sound the distant rumble of thunder. Shapes swirled in the corner of my vision, something moved, but the platform itself was empty. I was desperate to get away from that train. Each moment spent there felt like a moment lost to a void I couldn't comprehend. I looked around, searching for a sign of life or some path forward. And there it was, an old wooden bench, splintered and covered in grime, set against a wall that faded into darkness. I took a tentative step toward it, needing to gather my thoughts. The card in my pocket pulsed again, almost insistent now, and I touched it, feeling its warmth seep through the fabric of my jeans. "Why are you so important?" I whispered to it, half expecting an answer. Instead, I only heard more whispering, unrecognizable words weaving through the silence around me. Suddenly, a glimmer caught my eye. It was a small brass plaque mounted on the wall beside the bench. Curious, I stepped closer. The engraving was tarnished but readable. "Welcome to Lament Station. Dangerous journeys await." My heart dropped. It felt both ominous and enticing. I turned back toward the train, unsure if it had truly departed, or if I was still caught in some timeless loop. The man's words echoed in my mind. If those shadows were hungry, then I had to get moving before they noticed my absence. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed another figure emerging from the darkness. It was a woman, her hair tangled and eyes wide with fear. She stumbled toward me, seemingly as lost as I was. "Have you seen anyone else?" she asked, her voice shaking. "No," I replied, feeling my stomach churn. Just him." Her expression shifted to one of recognition. "You mean the man in the trench coat? He's been hunting people down, trying to get to the card. You shouldn't have it." A chill swept over me. "What do you mean?" Before she could explain, the shadows around us began to shift, creeping closer. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I hesitated, caught between the unknown dangers of the shadows and the fate tied to the card in my pocket. We were not alone anymore. "Help me find a way out," I urged, a sense of urgency overcoming my fear. "We need to move fast." But as she nodded, a low growl echoed in the space around us, and the shadows surged forward, more menacing than before. The shadows drew closer, and every instinct in me screamed to run. Without thinking, I grabbed the woman's hand. "This way," I shouted, pulling her toward a narrow passage at the far end of the platform. We dashed into the corridor, the growls echoing behind us. I could feel the walls vibrating with a sinister energy, urging us to hurry. With each step, I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see the shadows gaining on us. The air felt thick, almost suffocating, but we pressed on. The passage opened up into a larger area, illuminated by a sickly yellow light. Old signs hung limply from the ceiling, their words faded and barely legible. I scanned the space, looking for anything that could help us. "Do you see a door?" she panted, her breath coming in sharp gasps. "No," I replied. "Just more darkness." She turned, eyes wide. "If we don't find a way out, they'll—" Before she could finish, the growl returned, louder now. It felt like it was right behind us. I shoved her ahead of me as the shadows spilled into the corridor, tendrils extending toward us. Panic surged through me, propelling me forward. Suddenly, I spotted a flicker at the edge of my vision. A door. It stood ajar at the far end, inviting and dangerous all at once. "Over there!" I shouted, and we raced toward it. Just as we reached the door, the shadows lunged. I pushed the door open, dragging her inside, slamming it shut behind us. We leaned against it, gasping for breath. Silence enveloped us, but I knew it wouldn't last long. We were in a small room, cluttered with discarded objects, old suitcases, crumpled papers, and what looked like rusty tools. It felt abandoned, yet it had a pulse of energy that made me uneasy. I noticed a small window on the far wall, too small to escape through, but narrow enough to allow a weak light to penetrate the gloom. "What is this place?" she whispered, scanning the room. "Is it a storage room?" I shook my head, bewildered. "I'm not sure, but we can't stay here." As we moved around the room, I kicked a dusty suitcase and it sprang open, revealing an array of strange trinkets inside. A tarnished compass, a broken watch, and a series of photographs. I picked one up, and my heart skipped. The man from the train stood in the background, lurking near a group of people, his sinister smile hauntingly familiar. "That's him," I said, turning to the woman. "He's been here before. What does he want?" "I don't know," she responded, her voice trembling. "But we need to figure out how to use that card. It's important." The card pulsed again in my pocket, as if it wanted to be released. I hesitated. Could it really guide us, or was it part of the darkness seeking to trap us? Just then, a loud thud shook the door as the shadows pressed against it, their growls increasing in volume. We had to make a choice, and we had to do it fast. "Should we use the card?" I asked, glancing nervously at her. "I don't know," she replied, fear etched on her face, "but it might be our only chance." Before I could respond, the door shuddered violently like it might splinter at any moment. Finally, I pulled out the card, and with a racing heart, I made my decision. I held the card tightly in my palm, feeling its warmth radiate through my skin. The shadows outside the door thrashed and howled, echoing our tension. "We don't have a choice," I whispered, my voice trembling. "It's now or never." "Do it," she urged, her eyes wide with fear and anticipation. I nodded, steeling myself against the onslaught of darkness pressing against us. In one swift motion I flipped the card over, revealing the image of a crow. Its dark wings were spread, and beneath it read the words, "Surrender to the night." The Yai. A sudden hush enveloped the room. The growls faded into an eerie silence, and I felt a shift in the air. I held my breath, waiting for something, anything, to happen. The card pulsed gently, and the shadows outside the door began to retreat, pulling away as though repelled by some unseen force. "What's happening?" the woman asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I think... I started, but the words died on my lips as the shadows slowly transformed. They twisted and coiled, morphing into a swirling mass of darkness that congregated in one corner of the small room. I couldn't take my eyes off it. It pulsed with energy, a living being teetering on the edge of reality. Suddenly, a hand reached out from the mass, dark but strangely familiar. I stumbled back, my heart racing as the figure began to emerge, a visage I recognized, a face from my past. It was the old man, his features still gaunt, but now tinged with sorrow rather than malice. "Help me," he rasped, his voice tinged with desperation. My pulse quickened with every word, a mix of dread and recognition flooding my senses. The woman looked at me, her confusion clear. "Is he—" "I don't know," I admitted, feeling the fear clawing at me. I had been haunted by shadows long enough. Doubts clouded my judgment. "What do you want?" He gestured weakly toward the card still clutched in my hand. "Release me. There's no time." I hesitated. What if this was a trap? Shadows were still coiling around us, waiting for an opportunity to pounce. "You disappeared on the train," I said, trying to apply reason to the chaos. "What do you expect me to believe?" "I am bound to this place. This card holds the key," he insisted, urgency bleeding into his tone. "You must choose before it's too late." With a flicker of resolve, I stepped closer to him. "But what will happen if I do?" "You'll free us all," he declared, his expression shifting into something almost pleading. The shadows at the door began to stir again, forming into a threatening mass. "Their hunger is insatiable," he warned. "Choose now." The room itself felt alive, trembling with a tension I couldn't comprehend. "What if I refuse?" The words slipped from my mouth like a desperate prayer, seeking some kind of escape. He faltered, the sadness settling over his features. "Then they will claim you. Choose quickly." The darkness surged toward us, and I felt time stretch and pulse, the stakes escalating in a dance of shadows and light. The woman beside me gasped, "Make a choice. Now." My heart raced as I looked at the card in my palm, then at the old man's pleading eyes. I thought of all the encounters, the faces, their riddles, the darkness that seemed to follow me, always waiting. I could feel the whispers returning, urging me to act. I raised the card high, feeling its warmth seep into my bones. "I release you," I shouted with conviction. A surge of energy coursed through me as I called out the words. "I surrender to the night." In that moment, the shadows froze, an overwhelming force radiating from the card. The darkness lifted, swirling around us in a maelstrom, pulling at the old man. "Thank you," he breathed, his tone both grateful and sorrowful. The shadows pulled him closer and closer until in an instant the room's oppressive weight shattered, exploding into a sea of light that enveloped both of us. I felt like I was being torn apart, yet simultaneously whole. As the light faded, I found myself back outside on the platform of Lament Station, the cold night air biting at my skin. I was alone. The train was gone, and so were the shadows. For a moment, everything felt eerily calm. I took a tentative step, looking around but saw no signs of the old man or that dark train. Had I really freed him? Or had I merely succumbed to darkness myself? Questions fluttered through my mind, but the unease lingered. I had escaped, but what lingered outside this reality? Were my choices really my own? I moved forward, uncertainty clinging tightly to my thoughts. I knew I could never erase those shadows, nor would I be free of the memories they haunted me with. I guess I would come to terms with the fact that some questions might remain unanswered forever. I took one last look back, wondering if I'd ever see that train again. And then I walked away from Lament Station, forever changed, but still searching for answers.